second part of this webinar series done in conjunction with vetpower.org. Last week we discussed vet power and vet equity and what it is that employers look for when they are interviewing veterans. And today we'll continue along that premise just a little bit. Today's is the science of reinvigorating your vet power. So in this economy, employers are looking for warriors who happen to be civilians, not civilians who don't know how to be warriors. And today, Mr. Garton, Jeff Garton, will be discussing a lot more of this in detail. And for anybody who was not here last week, Jeff Garton is a best-selling career author. He's the former head of global staffing at Kraft Foods and Miller Brewing, and president of Career Contentment, Inc. His research into why some people are more successful than others when looking for jobs and keeping them longer provided the design foundation for vetpower.org's virtual classroom and veteran empowerment training. We also have with us Colonel Diane Corcoran. Ms. Corcoran is she is a PhD. She has a PhD in nursing management as well as a master's in educational psychology. She's the president of the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and she's a Desert Storm veteran and as well as a Vietnam veteran. And she is considered to be a pioneer in near-death experiences and the studies of everything that goes along with them. So we're very happy that Diane could make it today. And unfortunately, Frank Campanero was supposed to join us, but he informed us that he was stuck on a plane at the moment. So we got a good sub in here with Colonel Corcoran. So without further ado, I will go ahead and turn this over to Jeff Garton.
Thanks very much, Doug, and thanks again to the Disabled Veterans National Foundation, and thank you, Colonel Corcoran, for helping out today. I know Frank was very excited about today's event, so I'm kind of saddened that he is stuck on a tarmac in Washington National. So we'll get the best out of this as we can. Vetpower.org, working in cooperation with Disabled Veterans National Foundation, is a nonprofit organization, and what they do is fill the gaps in services provided to job-seeking veterans. So a big focus of what we're doing is getting this veteran empowerment training out to as many job-seeking as veterans as we can and their family members. In today's webinar, we're going to be discussing the new science of the mind and how to strengthen your vet power and vet equity to help you have a fulfilling life and meaningful career despite all the emotional turmoil associated with the difficult economy and job market. And the call to action today, you see here, is this: get out of your head, learn to embrace your everyday challenges for the opportunities they provide for your personal growth, and then realize just how powerful and enduring you really are. When I say get out of your head, I'm referring to the tendency of most people to live their lives on autopilot, wasting time commiserating and ruminating about their worries and troubles, and many of which disappear when you stop thinking about them, and instead engage your mind in getting what you desire out of this world. And when I say realize just how powerful and enduring you really are, I mean just that. Right now, our society is experiencing a scientific awakening unlike anything that has happened before in human history. Discoveries in quantum physics, resuscitation technology, and near-death experiences, which we'll have Colonel Corcoran talk a little bit about, are providing a growing body of evidence for spiritual influences such as a creator, life after life, reincarnation, energetic healing, mental telepathy, and the existence of a unified field of knowledge. We're beginning to understand the role our individual and collective consciousness plays in creating a better world reality. So now, what scientists from around the globe are realizing is that each of us is an eternal being, a co-creator with the power of mind to heal yourself, forge a better reality, and to succeed despite whatever your challenges may be, and it gets better. Much of the training provided by the military, particularly in regard to emotional resilience, self-motivation, and power of mind, integrates many of the scientific breakthroughs I'm talking about today. In fact, research conducted by the military has helped to make many of the recent scientific breakthroughs possible. And here's what this means to you. By virtue of your military training and the mental discipline you received, you got a jump start on the competition for future civilian jobs. All you need to do is realize this, and beginning right now, start the process of reinvigorating your vet power for success in the civilian world. Veteran empowerment training teaches you how to do that, to capitalize on your awesomeness. And so for those who may not have been here last week, we're going to start with a little recap of what Dick White and I talked about last week. Last week we described what presumed vet power is. It's what other people presume to be true about soldiers and sailors because of their rigorous training and experiences. We endow veterans with certain qualities and characteristics like strength, confidence, courage, discipline, loyalty, and honor, and you can probably think of a dozen more qualities. And even if a veteran doesn't actually possess those characteristics until they prove to us otherwise. So when employers and interviewers meet a job-seeking veteran, they want to know, do you have what it takes? Do you have the vet power to succeed in situations where civilian workers might not? Can you persevere and perform well? And if employers presume you to have the vet they're looking for and you behave in the manner to confirm their expectations, then your chances of being given a job offer are improved. But if you fall short of what the interviewer presumes to be true about veterans, it's likely the interviewer will become confused and frustrated because you're not what they expected. And when that happens, the employer will look for excuses not to hire you, saying something like, well, you don't know how to translate your military know-how into civilian job skills. So the point we're making here is that a veteran has to rise above the emotional turmoil associated with their transition, their unemployment, or other personal challenges. They can't show up for the interview looking no better than one of the millions of discouraged civilian job hunters out there. They have to demonstrate their presumed vet power. Last week, we also made the point that as your vet power diminishes over time, the longer you're out of the military, your potential for vet equity increases, provided you continue to capitalize on the favorable qualities and characteristics civilians and employers presume about veterans. So once a veteran, always a veteran. We gave the example of how Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North, after he retired from the military, he created his entire civilian career around his vet equity. He prospered based on his remnant vet powers, and any veteran can do this. However, and this is the not so good news and why we're here today, there's a disconnect between what employers are looking for and how transitioning veterans are being trained for their civilian job search and their career. This gap in training, we discussed the research that explains why employers reject veterans on the left side here, and then we discussed why veterans are hired on the right side. Now, look closely at the reasons for rejecting veterans, and you'll notice two things. The decision to reject is unrelated to job duties, or it's based on excuses and assumptions. In other words, unless you hire the veteran and road test them, you can't prove that these decisions are justified. And this happens when veterans search where they're not wanted, an employer who is not exactly vet-friendly, and they fail to demonstrate their vet power. Now, on the right, as to the reasons why veterans are hired, notice there's nothing on this list about resumes, cover letters, or interview skills, and there's very little emphasis on transferable job skills. Here's the point. This is what I learned heading up the staffing at Kraft and Miller. If the employer likes the veteran, then these things I just mentioned are somewhat insignificant. Essentially, the veterans who land jobs search where they're wanted, and the vet-friendly employer endows them with that presumed vet power. It's that, or they actually demonstrated the vet power. So now that you know why veterans are hired, the question is, are they getting that right training to enhance the right assets that employers are looking for? The answer is no. Traditional transition assistance training focuses on the tools and tips for how to look for jobs and attempts to fix what's presumed to be wrong with veterans, their deficits. Now, last week, and I think important point Dick made, we made the point that in preparing for a major sporting event, a professional athlete doesn't dwell on his or her deficits. Neither does a warrior preparing for battle dwell on his or her deficits. Winners will take all the deficits into consideration, but they intentionally dwell on what's right. their assets, and the impending victory. So can you see the disconnect that I'm talking about? Now, don't get me wrong, it's a good idea to fix what's wrong, but in a tough job market like we're experiencing today, you don't begin a job search with a deficit mindset. That's what leads to discouragement and the tendency to stop looking for jobs too soon. Veteran empowerment training focuses on developing your winning mindset or vet power. You learn how to leverage what's right about veterans, why employers want to recruit them in the first place. What we call their performance propulsion system. Now, here's the example we gave about performance propulsion system last week, and it's important that you keep this analogy of mind as we go through this today. On the top here, you see a classic muscle car. The car is propelled by the engine, and the engine is fueled by the gasoline. That's the system. The car is useless without the engine, and the engine is useless without the fuel. And the entire propulsion system is useless without a driver. But the question is, what is the engine that propels us humans, and what is the fuel we use to create the power we need to perform well? Point we made. This is very important. People are propelled by their emotions, which are created by their thoughts. And this human propulsion system is referred to as self-empowerment. Because we control our thoughts, we're like self-contained power plants function on the power of our mind, which is the focus of today's webinar, the science behind self-empowerment, your human propulsion system. So, how do you create the mindset to vet empower the favorable qualities and characteristics employers are looking for? And how do you do this when you're dealing with all of the emotional turmoil associated with your transition, your unemployment, rejections, any other personal challenges that can cause discouragement, depression, or lack of motivation? Well, the way you do this, the only way, is by improving how you think. By the power of your mind and mental mastery, you create the best emotions that will propel your ability to improvise, adapt, and overcome the civilian world. It's the same way you succeeded in the military when conditions were even harder. That's the recap. That was last week. And now we're ready for webinar number 2. And the starting question is, what do we mean when we say mental mastery and improving how you think? Well, I'm a big fan of Norman Vitt's appeal, but the solution is not the power of positive thinking. Persuading yourself to think positively about what you realize is it just doesn't work. There's not much positive to think about when you're jobless and the bills are piling high, your bank account is shrinking, and your wife is threatening divorce because you can't find a job, and you're struggling to find leads and jobs in an economy where there's more job hunters than jobs. And many of those folks might be better qualified on paper than you. So sprinkling favorable thoughts and fairy dust on those harsh realities just won't rev up your performance propulsion system. What we're talking about is the power of thinking non-negatively or intentionally. And this requires learning how to think both realistically and also optimistically. Learning how to take into account the harsh realities the way they are, and then looking for the agreeable middle ground. I'm talking about looking for the rainbow, not just the rain, looking for the silver lining, not just the dark clouds, and looking for the light at the end of the tunnel, not just the cold, dark tunnel. And again, we're talking about your human propulsion system, creating that right mindset and thoughts to vet empower the high-octane emotions for your best performance, regardless of whatever your circumstances might be. Here's what the science tells us. Mental mastery, or how you think, is primary to creating that reality that you desire. And if you're like most people, you grew up, like me, thinking that you live in response to your good circumstances, that life happens in response to whatever life throws your way, or that your success here on earth is limited by the genes you're born with. That life would be better if only this would happen or that would happen, or if you had more of this or less of that. And now we know these are all myths. They're not true. Thanks to scientific breakthroughs applied to the understanding of human consciousness and performance, scientists are coming to the realization that the world you see around you does not give rise to your consciousness or awareness, but that your consciousness, how you think, actually creates what seems so real to you. Your thoughts, our thoughts, we're co-creating your future, which means You're not a passive bystander where life is happening around you. You're an active participant in creating the good or bad reality in which you live. The idea here is to become a proactive participant by improving how you think intentionally to create the reality you desire. And I'm talking about that empower your best life. You don't live in response to your circumstances. Some of you may have heard about the Holmes and Rahe stress scale, and I know Colonel Corcoran has, the scale that ranks the major stressors in your life from the highest to lowest. Here are some of those major stressors that are relevant to career and job transitions. Medical experts tell us that depending on how you mentally deal with these stressors, you can cause yourself an even premature death. In other words, the stressors in life are not the problem. Rather, the problem is the meaning you assign to the stressors and the reaction you cause yourself. You create a bad reality that can weigh you down and potentially kill your body. Until you think about your circumstances, they're meaningless. Now, thinking positively about these same stressors won't make them any less stressful. The idea is to think intentionally or non-negatively about them, so to create ease rather than strain. And you do this by assigning those stressors in life a better meaning, so to temper the psychological and the physiological effects on both your brain and body. Rather than empower these stressors to harm you, you learn to then empower yourself, your mindset, to create the high-octane emotions that'll help you perform well, which is what employers are looking for. Those emotions include joy, optimism, excitement, enthusiasm, and gratitude. Otherwise, if you allow your brain to think automatically, we'll talk more about that in just a moment, or if you allow yourself to think negatively, you unintentionally create the worst emotions that can lead to poor performance, bad impressions, and the wrong results, or even ill health and premature death. The wrong emotions I'm referring to: fear, worry, envy, doubt, and anger. You assign the meaning to your circumstances, which makes you responsible for the good or bad reactions you experience. Your reality, as we said, is created by how you think. Science of the mind is teaching us that despite how difficult your current circumstances may be, you still have the power to temper their harmful effects to your mind, body, and performance when you learn to improve how you think, to the fuel to your human propulsion system. So I want this slide here. I want you to think about these pictures here. Take a look at some of the things we learn how to do as we grow up and live our adult lives. We learn how to eat and diet. We learn how to exercise, how to speak, study, how to play musical instruments, how to dance, how to climb, how to swim, how to drive cars, fly airplanes, and to fight as soldiers. And we even learn how to look for jobs and keep them. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Of all those things you learn how to do, your ability to get started and do them well despite your challenges and circumstances is dependent on just one basic skill that we're never taught how to do. And I think you know where I'm going. That one basic skill is how you think. There's no classes on how to think in the most manner to fine-tune your propulsion system or create the reality you desire. Because you can think, it's assumed you don't need to improve how you think, and that's a major problem for each of us. And this deficit in that training is a causal factor to the most serious problems people face each day and throughout their entire lifetime. What psychiatrists tell us is that insanity is the chronic and innocent misuse of thoughts. In other words, bad thinking is habitual, and we don't even realize when we're doing it or the serious consequences we're creating for ourselves. Remember, your human propulsion system relies on your intentional and non-negative thoughts to fuel good performance and favorable impressions. Otherwise, when your thinking is habitually automatic or negative, you unintentionally fuel the wrong emotions that cause psychological and physiological problems. And it's insane what we innocently do to ourselves, the bad realities we create. Now, here we see what happens when you habitually misuse the power of your mind and thoughts. Because you lack training on how to think intentionally, you unintentionally create a living hell for yourself. Then you start believing your own negative self-talk and then unintentionally sabotage the fulfillment of your own best intentions. So rather than self-empower your best attitude, performance, and impressions, you self-sabotage your chances for creating a better reality. Garbage in, and, as they say, garbage out. As we said before, your circumstances or stressors in life are not the problem, although your challenges are very real out there, and we don't want to minimize those. They're also meaningless until you assign them a meaning and react, which is a mental process you're responsible to control. We just forgot to teach you how. So the real problem is a lack of mental mastery or how you think about your circumstances. If you're thinking mental mastery is unimportant or that this is soft stuff, you don't need to learn, then think again. This whole idea of mental mastery has its origins in the military. And what the samurai warriors called Bushido, or the way of the warrior. And that Bushido refers to a mindset or way of thinking that it was in alignment with a strict moral code of conduct that inspired loyalty and honor to the death. A mindset that enabled the samurai warrior to self-empower their best performance despite what their circumstances were, to vet empower courage and confidence rather than fear. Then, in the 1970s, the science of the mind evolved. The U.S. Army and the Stanford Research Institute launched what was called Project Stargate to investigate claims of psychic phenomena that could have military implications. The Men Who Stare at Goats, you might have seen that movie, poked fun at that research. Research, by the way, that helped to produce the field of remote viewing. Now, that's the ability to remotely spy on others from a distance by simply using the power of your mind. Although Project Stargate was officially closed in 1995, experts in medicine and psychiatry and psychology are still experimenting with remote viewing, and one of the potential applications involves the treatment of PTSD, the power of your mind to heal your body. So now, what does all of this have to do with you? Here it is. Because of your military training, it's presumed by non-veterans and employers that you've learned the way of the warrior. That you have the mental discipline to succeed in situations where civilians might not. You have the mindset to persevere and perform well, and can thereby improve an employer's productivity and profits like no civilian job owners can. And that's the whole idea behind veteran empowerment training, to reinvigorate that mental discipline and potential for improved performance, to help you strengthen and leverage what's right about veterans. So your job when searching for jobs is to demonstrate your vet power and vet equity, and that to ensure that your networking contacts, the recruiters or any interviewers or hiring managers, see that you have that performance propulsion system they're recruiting for. To help you do this, we're going to go deeper now into the science of the mind and examine just how powerful and enduring you really are. I think this is going to appeal to Colonel Corcoran once we get into this, because her background is just where I'm going. When we talk about mindset, the way you think, we're talking about human consciousness, which opens the door as well to talk about spirituality. Just a few years ago, these topics were taboo. They were not a part of science, but were intentionally avoided. Today, you can't graduate from medical school without a series of courses on consciousness and learning how to take a patient's spiritual history. Today, there's now an inclusive worldview whereby your consciousness and spirituality are playing a starring role in helping the human race understand our origins, where we're going, our purpose for existing, and how the universe really works, how to create a better reality. And scientists are awakening to the idea that the biggest transition you'll ever make is not from the military to civilian life, or from one career to another. Rather, your biggest transition will be from your mortal life here on earth to your eternal life in the spiritual realm. And for the short time you spend on earth, you're here to learn and grow from challenges you may have previously selected for your own development. More about that in a minute. For now, science at the quantum level is providing evidence of a creator, that you are a co-creator, that you are not annihilated at death, but may have several lives, that you have the power to heal yourself, that remote viewing we just talked about, that stuff is real, and that our collective consciousness is actually creating the world around us. We really do create our own reality by how we think, our mindset. And the question is, what are you doing about this, about these breakthrough discoveries? I told you just a moment ago that science is discovering that you are the co-creator of your own reality. Scientific evidence exists for that. So the choice is yours. You can sit on a fence in life as a passive bystander, as most of us do, with a victim mentality when things don't go your way, or you can take the new option that science is handing you and learn how to use this new science to create a better reality for yourself and also the members of your family. Now, I realize, and I want to stress this point, some of you are learning today, this is pretty unbelievable stuff, but don't just take our word as fact. I encourage you to be skeptical. Do your own research to find out what we're talking about here is true and beneficial to having a fulfilling life and meaningful career. Check out the works of this fellow here. He's an author and teacher who wrote the textbook on quantum physics that's being used in colleges and medical schools all around the world. And he says, by the power of your mind, you have the ability to create heaven on earth. And research in the field of quantum physics can prove it. Later, we'll give you an example of how this is done. Dr. Swami is on a quest to make all of us quantum activists. He wants you to take seriously the power of your mind and consciousness to create a better reality. And veteran empowerment training is our way of helping you do just that. We've all heard about a book or a movie called The Secret, how to manifest anything you want in life, from more money, a new job, a car, and so forth. And we all know that stuff doesn't really work. By simply thinking you want something, it doesn't make it magically appear. And according to Dr. Goswami, here's what he says. It doesn't work. We live on the left here in a material world. And we are constrained by our pride and our egos and the resulting strain we cause ourselves. We do, and we concentrate only on me. Therefore, our ability to manifest is limited to simple choices like, do we go here, go there? Do we take a job here or there? Do we vanilla ice cream or chocolate and so forth? If we want to manifest something a little bigger, like say a Porsche 911 in our driveway tomorrow morning, then he says every human on earth should have that same opportunity. That's just not feasible. That's not how manifestation works. What Goswami says is true manifestation occurs at the spiritual level, here on the right side, and with a more subtle degree of human consciousness, when we simply be who we are and our intentions are beneficial to the collective good of all, a level of consciousness at which we're all more tolerant of others and oriented toward peace and love. We manifest without hidden motives or the intention of personal gain. And rather than do on the one extreme or be on the other extreme, he says the proper way of life involves do, a little bit of both. While in the material world, we need to integrate more spirituality into our daily lives. And that's, by the way, that's Colonel Corcoran's full-time job now, and she'll talk a little bit about that. I'm referring to how we increase our level of consciousness, a major part of our human propulsion system. Here's why that's so important. Let's take a look at the same continuum, but this time from the employer's point of view, and we'll discuss how to manifest your next job. Ultimately, employment is by invitation only. Employers hire only who they want to hire. As you know, they don't always hire the most qualified people. Your good credentials, experience, resume, polished image, and interview skills are important to help qualify you for consideration. But these outside or material world things make you simply discoverable. They don't guarantee you're qualified for hire. Employers hire who they like most, regardless of your credentials. So your likability increases when you practice do, when you can distance yourself from your ego, me, and the strain that can diminish your attitude and performance. And you take on the spiritual qualities that improve your ease and quality to get the job done. But also, those same qualities enable you to establish relationships and get along with other workers. These characteristics are what make you worth liking and worth hiring. Employers evaluate your entire human propulsion system. So the first step to manifest the job you desire involves empowering the right mindset for the best performance, results, and impressions. And when you do, I guarantee your improved likability will cause the job to find you. That's how you'll feel when you do manifest the job, because employers are out there looking for you, your likability factor, your vet power. We'll talk more about that next week. Veteran empowerment training gives you the resources that can put you right here in the middle of this continuum And then we give you more resources to help elevate your likability. Again, if you like those resources, they can help you reach all the way to the top. But remember, doobie-doobie-doo. Success involves a healthy blend of ego on the left from the material side, plus to cultivate love and your likability from the spiritual side. I realize this stuff may sound soft for a hardened veteran, but I got to tell you, nothing in this world can make you stronger, and that's what science is learning. Traditional job readiness training is primarily beneficial to you, your credentials, your curb appeal, and job search tools. Veteran empowerment training is beneficial to you, but also it's beneficial to the employers who want to hire you. It's all about improving your performance, enabling yourself to create a better reality. And now it's the foundation of your vet power and how it works. Here's the question that most adults, believe it or not, still don't have the answer for, and some scientists are still debating the answer. And here it is. What's the primary function of your brain? Your brain keeps you alive, and the body plods along trying to keep up with the Joneses. Even as you sleep, your brain keeps working, humming along. Earlier I said that the world around you doesn't give rise to your consciousness, but that your consciousness, what seems so real to you, including your virtual and virtual body. So go figure, what is it that can make something that's not there? Your consciousness can. So now the ultimate question, where does your consciousness come from? From where do your thoughts and your intentions originate? Or let me ask this another way. Who's the boss, you or your brain? Who are you in relation to your brain? Are you the one in the same? Or are you a spiritual entity that is simply using your body and brain to get around on planet Earth? The experts in science and medicine are still split on deciding who's the boss, your brain or your mind, and which are you? We're adults now. Aren't we supposed to know these things? But we don't. We're still debating them. But here's the challenge. When a surgeon cuts open your skull, he or she will find your brain, but your mind and consciousness is not biological or physical. Your mind is spiritual. And 95% of what we know about the human brain was discovered only during the last 20 years, the decade of the brain. And what we know about your mind, that's still under investigation, which is why scientists are split. But this is changing quite rapidly, and here's what we know. Scientific experts insist that chemicals and microtubules inside the brain create your thoughts and consciousness, that you and your brain are one, and you're annihilated at death. You cease to exist after you're dead. But here's the problem. That theory doesn't hold water. It doesn't completely explain how people, after being resuscitated from death, report having thoughts, enhanced awareness, and vivid memories during that period when they were pronounced dead. How are these people capable of recalling conversations and activity between medical staff when their brains are not supposed to be working? Not only did their consciousness continue after death, they believed their after-death experience was not imagined or even a hallucination, but it was realer than real. Something amazing is going on here that the material scientists cannot explain, which is where the spiritual dimension comes into play. A growing number of cardiologists, neurosurgeons, and neuropsychiatrists believe that consciousness exists apart from the brain and is not dependent on the brain, and that this theory of non-localities, which is what it's called, is not based on the scientific method per se, but on the documented cases of over 30 million people who survived a near-death experience. In fact, the first case documented by a medical researcher was by Dr. Melvin Morse, was that of a U.S. Army veteran. And thanks to advances in resuscitation technology, over 750 people are brought back to life each day in the U.S., and their life-after-life experiences are remarkably similar to near-death experiences in other countries, cultures, and regardless of their age, gender, and what they believed religiously before dying, suggesting with more and more certainty we're not annihilated at death, but we continue to live as light and energy and information in another realm until we return again to this earth for more growth and development. But don't take our word for this, as I said. Be skeptical. Do your own research. What you learn is this. Although the brain is a magnificent organ, it's not It's not the source of your consciousness, and it's not responsible for your critical thinking and memory. That this assumption is now considered logically incoherent. It makes no sense. Today, more and more scientists are beginning to embrace an inclusive worldview, that your mind is responsible for guiding your life. Physicists like Dr. Amit Goswami take this one step further by suggesting, as I mentioned earlier, consciousness at the quantum level of cells and particles is also responsible for creating reality, or what seems so real to you. Consider the opinion of Eben Alexander. Eben is a brain surgeon and former Harvard Medical School professor whose New York Times bestselling book documents his own near-death experience. Not only did this other world experience transform his life, it reversed his hardcore scientific opinion that he's a brain surgeon, that he is responsible for your consciousness. Today, Dr. Alexander has become a leading evangelist on the existence of an afterlife and how consciousness exists apart from the brain. But what's most important about this message is this. Based on his own near-death experience and his own subsequent research into this phenomenon later, Dr. Alexander is 110% convinced that our science is incomplete, that despite his years of knowledge about the brain, we're an eternal spiritual beings who temporarily have human bodies to help facilitate our growth and cultivate love. And that life's challenges out there are not only to be expected, we should embrace them for the learning opportunities provide us. Now, consider the significance of this hope-filled message for just a moment. Just stop right now. Put all the troubles to the side and take another look at the bigger picture here. Or as we said before, get out of your head and realize just how powerful and enduring you really are. Temporarily, your mind and spirit are enrolled in the University of Planet Earth. And as tough as your challenges may be, they're a part of your learning cultivation. And by the power of your mind, you're equipped to succeed despite whatever those challenges may be. Remember, you assign the meanings, which makes you responsible for your reactions and your resulting good performance or not so good performance. But either way, you have much to learn from your failures as you do your successes. Both are okay, and it's all for your learning and growth. So let this sink in for just a bit. And for those of you who are still skeptical, consider the work of another neurosurgeon, Dr. Adrian Owen. He's a research neuroscientist from the UK who now lives in Canada. In 2011, Dr. Owen, he was credited for perhaps one of the most important medical discoveries of this decade. Using medical scanning technology, he found a way to communicate with patients who are diagnosed to be in a persistent vegetative state, where it appears like the light's on but nobody's home. Here's the question Dr. Owen states, and keep in mind the patient's brain was dead, but he was somehow activated as the body remained comatose. As Dr. Owens was speaking with the patient, who or what inside that patient's body activated the dead brain? Who's talking when the brain's dead? Who is really the boss? Scientists believe Dr. Owen made the first contact with the mind, consciousness, or soul, whatever you prefer to call it. It's the boss. The point being, not only is your unseen mind capable of functioning separately from your brain, it can actively participate in helping you to heal your body. In his conversations with his seemingly dead patients, they've told Dr. Owen that they're not in pain and that they're aware of events going on in their lives based on stories told them by visitors to the hospital room, like being told about a marriage of a family member or a birth of a relative. And scientists believe that science of the mind represents the new frontier for medicine and performance improvement, and we're just getting started. And now, are you there, Colonel Corcoran? Would you like to give us your thoughts on this? Give us your thoughts on this.
Well, it's amazing since next week Eben is going to be doing his presentation in Washington, D.C. at our annual conference. I couldn't agree more with what you're saying. And we constantly see people. Our job at the International Association of Near-Death Studies is to support people and help people who have near-death experiences or other kind of transformative spiritual experiences feel okay about this is a normal thing and these are after effects and things that can happen. And many of the after effects of these experiences are absolutely amazing and change people's lives forever, of which Eben is one, because he clearly did not believe in near-death experiences when he was working as a neurosurgeon, but after his coma and his experience, he saw the light, so to speak. I think that this is an area, you're very right, that the research of consciousness is so important and really now starting to bring forward all these other ideas. We have been saying for years the near-death experience is important, and we've been saying for years trying to get physicians to understand its part in for soldiers, their recovery, because my belief is that we could use the near-death experience and the spiritual aspect of this and their transformation to help heal the other aspects that they're having trouble with, their mental health issues, their physical issues, their pain. And we have many, many people that have certainly found this true. And I can tell you that people who come to us, and we have a quick example that I can think of, is a soldier who is a Iraqi vet. He was a computer geek prior to going into the service. He was injured in a blast injury, and when he came home, he was literally given all kinds of mental health diagnosis filled with drugs because he tried to tell people about this near-death experience he had. And consequently couldn't work, he couldn't think straight because of the drugs. And we were eventually able, he finally found us, came to us, and we were able to help him get off all his medication, come to terms with his experience and what it meant, and he went back to work. Really not by the typical means, but because we were able to do some things with people who understand spirituality, as you mentioned, reincarnation. We actually have a program for therapists to teach therapists about near-death experiences and how to enhance these people's lives because of understanding the spiritual aspect of it. I'm a great supporter of wanting to help veterans because I know there are thousands, and if you go back to the Vietnam, millions of people out there sitting who have had near-death experiences, who have been afraid to talk about them, don't understand the power of how they could use it, and have been made to feel like there's something wrong with them when they try to talk about it. And this aspect of consciousness and what we could do about it is just on the brink of exploding. And we are always happy, and I've been for years, trying to get veterans aware of us because of that. And we'll be able to see some of this next week at our annual conference. For the first time, we have a veteran, Iraqi veteran, who is going to be on a panel and talk about his experience. And
Corcoran, could you give our listeners your website address and how to reach you?
It's www.iands.org. And my personal email is dcorcoran1946@gmail.com. And we would be happy to see any people come to our conference or here. Eben is doing an evening talk next week just to give people a glimpse, and it's open to the public, and it's in Washington, D.C.
Fantastic. And inside the Veteran Empowerment Training course, I have a full-length interview with Dr. Corcoran talking about this stuff. Now, I'm going to proceed. We're going to wrap up here. We're nearing the end of our webinar. Colonel Corcoran, thank you a million for participating, and don't go away because you may have something to add here a little bit later.
Okay.
All right, so what we're talking about here, based on our discussion of NDEs and consciousness, here's what the human propulsion system really looks like. According to cardiologist Dr. Pim van Lommel of the Netherlands, he says your mind is spirit of the boss and it exists apart from your brain and body. Consciousness arises from your mind, and your brain is actually a biological transceiver. It receives orders and then sends messages throughout the body to execute those orders. So when we say transceiver, it's just like a PC, TV, or radio. Those electric devices produce signals or process signals from the outside. So, for example, the internet's not inside your PC, Oprah Winfrey is not inside your TV, and the Rolling Stones aren't sitting inside your radio. Your consciousness is not inside your brain. Your brain receives your consciousness, and scientists are still investigating how thoughts and emotions interact with your heart and your DNA to help create your reality, or what seems so real to you. So to wrap up, we'll also try to lay a little bit of the groundwork for next week's final webinar, and here's where we are. The quantum you on the right here, that's the powerful boss of your thoughts and emotions. That's responsible for self-empowering or vet-empowering your emotion and performance. And the material you is a biological computer, and it's supposed to follow the boss's orders to make things happen. Now, is this working? Is this working? Is your mental habit to create heaven on earth, or does your mindset create hell on earth? We said earlier that insanity is a chronic and innocent misuse of thoughts, and that bad thinking is habitual. We don't realize the damage we cause ourselves with wrong thinking. So here's the thing. Are we doing a good job? Because we lack training on how to think intentionally, we have the bad habit of allowing our thinking to go on autopilot. Rather than focus on what we're doing on the outside, the task at hand, what we do, and we all do this, the boss goes within and examines your thoughts. You end up commiserating, remunerating, analyzing, and savoring your past mistakes, and you worry about the unknown future, innocently creating the wrong emotions or living hell on earth. Harvard researchers tell us that periods of unhappiness occur most often when the boss gets lazy and allows your mind to wander within. So the question is, how often do you think this happens? What percentage of your time does the average person spend mind wandering? Here's the answer. Research by Harvard professor Daniel Gibbert says nearly half of your waking hours are spent on autopilot, mind wandering, and unknowingly creating your own unhappiness. In fact, some people actually enjoy making themselves feel sad, thinking in a way that creates the wrong emotions for them to enjoy, like a drug. Researchers and cellular biologist Bruce Lipton, here on your right, he looks at this autopilot phenomenon from an entirely different point of view. He says your mind, the boss, is engaged in critical thinking only 5% of the time, that the other 95% of the time is spent simply following the programming you received while growing up. So rather than leverage the power of your mind to create heaven on earth or the life you desire, you do no more than your conditioning and your limited self-beliefs will allow. And so we live our lives in the ruts we help to create. And both of these researchers make a good point. What they're saying is that unhappiness and the emotional turmoil in your life arises when the boss, your mind, becomes lazy and allows your thinking to go on autopilot. So who's doing your thinking and creating problems in your life when your mind is not doing the thinking? And I think you know the answer. Anytime your mind goes on autopilot, and even when you sleep, your brain takes over thinking for you. That's a fail-safe system that helps keep you alive. Your subconscious thinking, that little voice and self-talk part of you, prefers to stay safely in the comfort zone of the conditioning you received while growing up. That's conditional thinking. That type of conditioning takes place inside your brain, not your mind. In fact, when the boss, your mind, wants you to get up and go and get things done or try something new, your subconscious will find a way to slow you down and hold you back. And your subconscious hijacks your critical thinking. It does this if it thinks holding you back is the best thing to protect your ego and body and keep you alive. And if you allow this to happen, you rarely break free of your comfort zone. Here's the part that really gets us into trouble. Because half or more of your time is spent mind-wandering or on autopilot, you don't realize when your subconscious has hijacked your thinking and it's creating problems for you. Because this has happened so often during your life, you're conditioned to let it happen without doing anything to prevent it. You live life blaming others for the problems you help to create. And the only way to prevent this is by raising your consciousness levels, your mindfulness, which is the whole idea of veteran empowerment training. Right now, I'm going to give you an example of how your mind becomes distracted and your brain hijacks your critical thinking. For this to work, I need you to move your head a little closer to your computer screen. And I want you to look closely at the next slide, which is an American flag, but with different colors. Here we go. Now, I want you to concentrate on that white dot. Just keep your mind focused on the white dot, and then you'll begin to notice that it looks like it's bouncing up and down very slowly or moving from left to right, or maybe the shadow is growing larger. And then I'm going to take that flag away and watch what happens. Did you see it? White and blue. Do you see that? What's happening here is that the brain, your mind is distracted by the white dot. And what happens is the brain takes over thinking for you and forms a suggestion. It says, aha, that's Old Glory. I'm going to help you see what we're talking about here, the American flag. And it's not there. It is a false reality. It does not exist. Here's what we're talking about. The mind is distracted by the dot. The brain takes a suggestion and forms the false reality. It helps you see what you think is the American flag. But then if you watch that white screen, like your dreams when they fade away when you wake up, those imagined colors fade when the boss takes over thinking. If you let your brain do the thinking always, then you become consumed with false realities, those imagined fears and self-limiting beliefs, and you inhibit your self-motivation and performance. You begin to think, well, there's no use in going to that job fair. They never hire people at job fairs. Or they won't like me. Why should I give them a cold call? I don't want to disrupt their time. Or I don't even want to put the fact that I'm a veteran on my resume. When today, that is a tremendous asset. We buy into these false realities created by our brain. Now, one of the things, this is one of your handouts, to help you along the path there, one of the important things to do is to contemplate the differences that you see here. This is one of your handouts, streams of consciousness, the material you and the quantum you. And I'm not going to dwell on this slide here because it is, in fact, one of your handouts. But it shows you the differences, and you need to put this on your refrigerator or someplace and help to remind you of what we're talking about here. Teach the quantum you, your mind and spirit, how to harness and leverage the power of your mind, rise above your difficult circumstances, and better power your best performance results and impressions. Here's how this works. Right now, follow along with this little exercise. I'd like you to think of someone you know, a spouse, maybe a friend or a colleague, someone you know well enough, reasonable certainty, how they might react to some bad news. And then once you have that person in mind, imagine you're the one that's about to deliver the news. And knowing how that person might react, how would you present that and make it easier for them to deal with the situation? What would you say to prevent or reduce any emotional turmoil that could upset them or bring them down or negatively affect their human propulsion system? And depending on the person and how well you know them, you might ask them, well, sit down and brace yourself. Or you might say, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And then or you might say, well, you might look for the good news and try to introduce the topic that way first, just to ease them into the topic. And here's the point of this exercise. In the same way that you have the power to help ease the reactions of others, the quantum you has the power to ease your own reactions. The quantum you is the one that's doing the thinking, right? And the material you reacts. You got the power to create any reaction would be better for you by the meaning you assign. When you would learn how to think intentionally or assign better meanings to your circumstances. Do to yourself what you would do to help others deal with their challenges. And That's what we're talking about. As Dr. Goswami says, that's how you create a better reality, or heaven on earth. Remember, we said insanity is the chronic and innocent misuse of thoughts. The idea is to change your bad thinking habits. Think intentionally or non-negatively to vet empower how well you feel and how well you perform, your human propulsion system. Again, that's how the quantum you can create heaven on earth. Emotions, as we said, are the engine that propel you to act. And fortunately for you, human emotions are created only by how you think. Emotions are not created by your circumstances. And that you have a vet power to self-empower your best attitude and performance is precisely what the employers are looking for when deciding if you have what it takes to persevere and perform well, despite work conditions that employers can't always make satisfying. So the down economy, the difficult job market, your transitions into and through the civilian job market, your finances, the death of loved ones, the government, and even the visible and invisible world, these don't cause your emotions until you think about them. However challenging your circumstances may be, they're always secondary or subject to how you choose to think about them, the meaning you assign. By the power of your mind, you can regulate how you feel and perform when you learn to regulate how you think. That's how you vet empower these favorable qualities and characteristics that employers are looking for. As we said before, your conditioning since you were a child is to allow yourself to think automatically. And more than half, as we said, more than half of your waking hours are spent mind-wandering, asking, why me? Why now? Why this? Why not else? And then ruminating about your past regrets and worrying about the unknown future and unintentionally creating your own unhappiness. And now you know it doesn't have to be this way. The mistake veterans make during their transition from soldier to civilian is to slip back into their civilian mindset and original conditioning. Then they leave behind the mental discipline they received in the military, and we're suggesting bring that mental discipline forward with you into the civilian world and recondition how you act and perform as a civilian. That's what we look for in recruiting veterans. Vet-empowered minds don't ask, why me? And then make themselves victims of their past, victims of their present, or victims of their future circumstances. Vet-empowered minds are engaged in the moment where the action is. Vets are disciplined to turn off the autopilot and flip switch their minds to proactively ask what and how questions that help them to improvise, adapt, and overcome despite whatever their circumstances may be. That's what employers are looking for, the power of mind and stewardship of your brain and body to persevere and perform well. And what does science say about how powerful you really are? Here's where we're going. To the material you on the left, we say your brain and body, we say this: you're bigger and more powerful than you realize. Even Colonel Corcoran even referred to that. Life's challenges are insignificant except for how they facilitate your cultivation here on Earth. And to the quantum you on the right side, we say, your mind and spirit, we say this: you've got a lot to accomplish in a short time you're here on Earth. Don't relinquish power, your mind power, to your temporary brain and body. Get your mind off the dots and stay focused and mindful on the fulfillment of your purposes here on Earth. Or as Dr. Goswami says in B, adapt an inclusive worldview that integrates the power of your mortal brain and body and the power of your eternal mind and spirit. Doobie-doobie-doo. And then create the ease and power that makes you both discoverable and likable by employers. So there you have it for today. But don't log off just yet. As we did last week, I'm going to turn this back over to Doug, and he's going to conduct a drawing to give you away 3 sets of our coaching guidebooks and an instructional audio package that will help you jumpstart your online veteran empowerment training. So, but first, let's take a look at next week's webinar agenda. Next 28, I'll be back with Frank Campanaro, and hopefully he'll be unstuck on the airport and able to join us. And we're going to discuss how to use your power of mind to leverage and maintain your vet power and equity. And the call to action next week is this: jobs find you, and you vet empower the right mindset employers are looking for to improve productivity and profits. So thank you for your time today. Thank you, Colonel Corcoran, for joining us. We'll see you all again next week. And thanks, Doug, and thanks to the Disabled Veterans National Foundation, and thanks to all the veterans who participated in today's event. We'll see you again next week. And don't forget, pass the word along to others to have them join us next week as well. Okay, Doug, the ball's in your court.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Garton, and thank you, Colonel Corcoran. We sincerely appreciate y'all coming out here and giving us some good information here. So as Jeff mentioned, next week we have our final of 3, and I am going to send out an invitation to that webinar to everybody who is registered. So you'll have to accept the invitation to get registered, but we certainly hope you can make it this time next week, same time, same place. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to email me at dwalker@dvnf.org, as in Delta Victor November Foxtrot. And in the meantime, we will send you those handouts, and we're also going to do the drawing via email. I'm going to select a couple that were on there. I believe the people who we had selected for this week had to make an early break at just a couple minutes early, but they will be informed. In the meantime, thank you, and we hope to see you this time next week. Bye-bye.